Good morning. Have your book open to the section that says Black Volunteers. It is on page 34 and 35. Right now we're going to complete this first section. It says, what do you already know about Abraham Lincoln? What role did he play in the Civil War? So remember, I need at least 3 to 4 sentences. What do you know about Abraham Lincoln? And what role did he play in the Civil War? Like, what was his position? What did he do? Go ahead and pause the recording so you can write your sentence and then press play when you're ready. Great. Today, for the first part, we're going to think about what is the main idea of the text. And remember, we find the main idea by asking a how or a why question about our title. So you can go ahead and do that. In this first box on number 3, ask your how or why question about the title. I'm thinking, how did Black volunteers participate in the Civil War? Or why did they participate in the Civil War? How did they participate in the Civil War? Why did Black volunteers participate in the Civil War? You can go ahead and pause as you're writing and then press play when you are finished. Before we begin reading, there's 2 vocabulary words I want you to think about today, and I want you to do your best to include these 2 words in your paragraph. The first one is discrimination. It's when you treat a group of people differently because they are not the same as you. So you might, if you look at this picture here, we have some people of different colors on one side of this crack, and we have people of different other colors on the other side of the crack. So it's a picture of discrimination because they are dividing people based on how they look. The second vocabulary word is Emancipation Proclamation. This is a document that Abraham Lincoln signed to free the slaves in the United States as well as the Confederate States. So the Emancipation Proclamation kind of ignored the fact that the Confederate States seceded from the Union, and they said anything that used to be the United States is still the United States, and we just freed all the slaves. All right, let's begin reading Black Volunteers. And remember, we're trying to look for the answer to our how or why question. How did Black volunteers participate in the Civil War? Why did they participate in the Civil War? In 1860, there were fewer than 500,000 free Negroes in the U.S. Almost 4 million blacks were held in slavery. It's a pretty big difference, 500,000 versus 4 million. When the war started, free blacks could not join the Union Army. In 1863, Lincoln issued the Emancipation Proclamation, stating that all slaves living in Confederate states were to be considered free. This is a pretty bold move by Lincoln because he is telling, another country what to do, but Lincoln doesn't recognize them as a country. He recognizes them as like a group of people who are not following directions. And so he's trying to get them back in order. All right, Congress then passed a law allowing black men to join the Army. They were paid less than white soldiers, and if they were captured, they were shot or enslaved. Wow, that's really interesting. So even though African Americans were free because of the Emancipation Proclamation and they could join the war, if they got caught by the Confederate troops, they either shot them on the spot or they made them slaves. However, these risks did not stop black men from taking part in combat. That's like fighting with guns and cannons. Several black soldiers won the Union's highest award for bravery, the Medal of Honor. So go ahead, think about your main idea. How did black volunteers participate in the Civil War? Our text says that after the Emancipation Proclamation, they were allowed to join the Union Army, but when they joined, they were paid less than white soldiers. You can pause the tape or go back and re-listen. Box 2. How were black volunteers? That should say, oh no, that's right. How were black volunteers different from white soldiers? And our text speaks to the treatment of the black volunteers. So you should think about how were they treated differently? And we have this part in our text that says they were paid less than white soldiers, and when they were captured, they were either shot or enslaved. So you can write that down in box 2, press pause if you need to, and then play when you're ready to listen again. In box 3, it says, why were black volunteers treated differently than white soldiers? So we need to think about the time period before the Emancipation Proclamation, like what was going on in the United States between whites and blacks that would cause whites to treat blacks differently. And then this is a good opportunity to use one of your vocabulary words. You can press pause as you're writing your answer and then play again when you finish. Box 4, how did black volunteers respond to the discrimination of the Union Army? So remember, discrimination is when you treat someone differently because of their race or their gender, because they're different from you. And so and in this case, we know black volunteers were discriminated against because they were black and not white. So how did they respond when they were paid less and when they were shot or enslaved? And this word, however, in our text lets us know how they respond. So even though they were treated differently, they responded this way. And it says it didn't stop them from taking part in combat. So even though they were paid less, they said, we are still going to fight in this war. Even though they risked getting shot or enslaved, they said, we're still going to fight in the war. And then it says several black soldiers won the Union's highest award for bravery, the Medal of Honor. So the text tells us that they fought, and they fought bravely because many of them won the Medal of Honor. So you can pause and write down your answer and then press play when you're ready. Let's get to this last question in box 4. What do these actions and feelings reveal about the character traits of the black volunteers? So we already know that they were brave because our text tells us, but let's think a little deeply or a little deeper about what are they like. Even though we know they're brave, what else are they like? If they are willing to fight in the war, even though they're being discriminated against, if they are winning the Medal of Honor, what else are they like? Go ahead and pause the tape as you write down your answer, and then you can press play when you're finished. And then you can also read some of these, look at the pictures and read some of these captions. This one about the proud black cannoneers is pretty good. The bravest black regiment, I would read that. A rejected volunteer, I would read that. And those could help you collect more evidence for this paragraph that says, how did African Americans participate in the Civil War? So you'll need your topic sentence from your main idea in box 1, and then you'll need some evidence from the text. So you can use evidence from box 4, but you can also use evidence from a rejected volunteer, proud black cannoneers, and the bravest black regiment. You have plenty of time to write your paragraph, so go ahead and get started.